Shalom Chaverim. Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Kind of a gloomy day here in the district. It didn't rain. It was chillier than I thought it would be, though it's still the beginning of April, and it's still more like March weather. And so I'm just introducing our topic this evening, and I will want to repeat it as more people join this live broadcast. And keep in mind that I'm glancing down at the lower left of, well, it's lower right of my screen. It's on my left. To read what people are writing. And sometimes if you're just listening, I hesitate. That's because I'm reading something. Yeah, if April, you're just listening, I hesitate. That's because I'm reading something. Yeah, if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? Yeah, if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? Somebody just asked me that. So I that question. And remember, you can also send me an email or a text and not necessarily write something on the screen. I do have my phone right here, and I could pick up a text or see if an email comes in if you'd rather not put it on the screen. And I continue to invite different people to be a guest. And I say every week, yes, you are invited to co-host with me next Wednesday night or any Wednesday night. But if Wednesday night doesn't work for you and you'd like to co-host, we'll pick another night and we can co-host. However, so far, no one has taken me up on the offer of co-hosting with me. And again, I'm disappointed. I really would like to have someone to co-host with and talk about things. What do you do when you find a synagogue teaching false teachings? Neat question. In Judaism, there's no central authority. There's no pope, bishop, cardinal, synod, Archbishop of Canterbury. There is no single authority that can dictate Judaism. Okay? Unlike some other churches where the leaders can take away the credentials of the pastor, or they can remove the credentials of the church so it no longer represents that movement. We have no such thing in Judaism. There's nothing to stop any of my colleagues from preaching things that I consider counterproductive, harmful, misleading. Nothing. That's one reason why I wrote my book, How to Be Jewish in 30 Seconds. Oh, let me get a copy. And people can buy it, people can read it, people can make comments on it, etc. And I could use TikTok. I can use my podcast, The Rabbi and I, my YouTube channel, The Rabbi and I. I can use all those places to present the counterpoint to what I may hear or what someone may say to me. Gee, I heard the rabbi preaching this or the rabbi said that, and isn't that wrong? And wrong with, no, I'm Reform. I'm not Orthodox. It's hard to label because there are different branches of Judaism, like Orthodox Judaism. I don't adhere, I don't believe in a lot of the teachings, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't fit me. It doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't bring me closer to the one. And isn't that the goal of any of our religions? To bring us closer to our understanding of a superior being, if you will. I don't like that word either, superior. To the one. We use the word God, higher power. Some comments in this live are likened to protect the community's experience. Oh, we're filtered. Yeah, thank you, because I'm often told that because I don't adhere to someone's particular faith or believe what they believe, I'm going to some place for eternal punishment and damnation. And also people, so it's nice that some of the comments are filtered in order, because the goal of TikTok, the goal of a forum is to share ideas, to ask questions, to be respectful, and to take pot shots or accuse and then disappear somewhere doesn't solve anything. If you really want to discuss reincarnation, you may have to ask that again after I finish what I'm saying. I'd be glad to discuss with any of you, any of the places, any of the religions, but all I find is people taking pot shots, saying things, and not really interested. Reincarnation's a good question because it relates to what I talked about earlier, no central authority in Judaism. So there are Jewish teachings in the Mishnah, in the Midrash, in the Talmud, in Jewish mysticism about reincarnation. So it's very hard to answer the question, do Jews believe in, without the central authority, without a Baltimore Catechism, without a document, to a charter to compare it to, it's hard to say anything is universal in Judaism. There are teachings that our spirit, our soul, can come back in an animal, a tree, another person, at another time, in another place. It's not mainstream Judaism. And that's how we judge things. Is this followed by, and who are the rabbis or teachers that are teaching it? And that goes back to the question about authority in Judaism without having a central authority. Each rabbi has to prove themselves. So I have to prove to you, or you have to believe in the things I'm saying. And now with artificial intelligence, both Gemini and ChatGPT, it's much easier now to find out how many Jews, how prevalent, what is the dominant view of reincarnation in Judaism, and you'll find it's a very narrow band. Now, someone asked me a question about Passover and food. Not a simple answer. You may want to send me an email, and we can set up a Zoom, or we can talk over email. And that would be nice, because depending on the level of how you want to observe Passover, whether it's in your home, whether it's outside your home, whether it's everywhere, how scrupulous you want to be. So there are many levels within. The goal of Passover is to celebrate religious freedom and to acknowledge the importance that everyone is free and safe and has a safe place to live, has medical care and food. And so the Passover Seder and the rules of Passover are like driving a car, but there's a difference between driving an 18-wheeler and driving a Yugo or a Honda or a Toyota or a Abrams tank. There's a difference. They're vehicles, they take you from place to place. And so we need to stop and say, what is my level of observance and what will accomplish the goal for me? And how I observe the Passover may not be the way you observe Passover. My friend Kushi from Chabad sent me, as he does every year, Shmora Matzah. I was in Costco yesterday, and they had a whole pallet of Shmora Matzah. However, regular matzah is fine. But if one wants to be more not diligent, not picayune, more narrow, more restrictive, then you want to get shmora matzah because of the way it's handled, the way it's guarded, the way it's processed. However, that doesn't mean that regular matzah is not acceptable, because it is. And I use the analogy of the armed forces. Being a Marine training is very different from the Coast Guard. Doesn't mean one is right, one is wrong. It means there's an appropriate place for either one. And we don't want to hold one branch of the service up and degrade a different branch of the service. That wouldn't be fair. That would be like saying, oh, I'm condemning my fingers because they don't act like toes. They're not supposed to act like toes. They're fingers. The Coast Guard, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, National Health Service, whatever we may be looking at, has a function. And the question is, are they doing the job they were designed to do, and not compare it to something else? So one can decide, this is the level of observance for Passover. This is how I'm going to do my Seder. And I would be open to anyone, rabbiblock@hotmail.com. And I have a Zoom room to discuss. I'm not going to talk you into anything. I'm not a policeman. I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong. However, what we want to discuss is, will your observance get you to where you want to be? And I use the expression, is it working for you? And that comes back to the question I'm often asked is, Rabbi, I'm not Jewish, can I do this? Well, you have to say to yourself, what's your motivation? Why do you want to do this? And does it reflect your belief? Does it help you unite with God? Reciting the rosary is perfectly appropriate if you're Roman Catholic. It's a very liturgical practice or exercise. It's not the same thing as eating a piece of matzah. And so when people ask me, gee, Rabbi, is it okay if I do that? We want to start by separating. Are we talking about a religious ritual, religious practice, something from the liturgy, or are we talking about something cultural? Often it's about food. And it's fascinating because every civilization on our planet has a food that involves a pancake with something in it and wrapping it. And you make the pancake out of wheat, rice, potatoes. Usually it's made out of a very common product where you live. And then you put something inside it and roll it up. So in Judaism, a blintza is a taco. And it's not Jewish, it's attempted to be German. And if you visit the Jewish community in India, in China, that goes back historically, many of the foods we wouldn't recognize or think they're Jewish, because here in the United States, we think of Jewish as Eastern European. And so you want to start with, what is it you're asking me about sampling or about sharing? Italian food. Turns out Italy has lots of different foods. It breaks northern and southern quickly, but then within that there's different food. And so when one goes into an Italian restaurant, usually, and you have to excuse me, maybe someone can correct me, usually we're sampling southern Italian, not northern Italian. But that's not an affront to anybody, and more often than not, the food we get at many of our ethnic restaurants are Americanized, because the American palate wouldn't find it tasty, wouldn't find it satisfying if we were to eat the authentic food. And again, that makes sense because of the way we were brought up, our culture. Grilled peanut butter and banana sandwiches. I'm not sure how that would go over in France or Italy. England, the food's terrible. Really. In Italy, it's good. France, it's good. The UK, not so much. And yes, you can convert to Judaism. And if you're interested, not in converting per se, but in learning about what it means to convert or how to convert, please, rabbiblock@hotmail.com. And I'd be glad to discuss with you once, twice, as often as you would like, what it means, what it entails, any way to help you make your decision. You see, I don't get credit if I help someone to convert. There's no score. There's nothing in it. The word rabbi means teacher, and I want to fulfill my being a teacher and teach. And so a lot of questions you ask are really good, and I incorporate some of them. Are you from... I'm from New England. I'm from Boston. I'm a Bostonian. And I am a graduate of Boston College, which affected my life dramatically. Great decision, my attending Boston College. So what would be appropriate in terms of, certainly when we think of Jewish foods, it's really nationality and cultural. It's Polish, it's Russian, it's German. There's nothing religious about what we label as Jewish food. It's the country you come from. And the Boston accent is definitely one. Yeah, I don't have a Star Wars or Park the Car. I lost my Boston accent that heavy 100 years ago. So in terms of sampling food, that doesn't come under the religious theology section. Now, what about wearing tefillin, phylacteries? And maybe you've seen them, little boxes with prayers on your forehead and arm, and they're worn during the morning service. Now you've entered an area of liturgy. And the question I would ask is, why would you want to practice a liturgy that, how do you get to heaven? It's not how. When we die, the spirit that God gave us returns to God. And if you want to say spirit is soul, then the soul returns to God. We go back to where we were before we were born. Okay? That's so I would want to ask, why would you want to? Is this going to enhance your relationship with God? Is this going to bring you closer to the one? And if so, let's talk about other practices. And the same thing applies to saying the rosary, as I mentioned earlier. It's a very specific liturgical act in the Roman Catholic Church. And if you find it meaningful as a Roman Catholic, then you should perform the rosary. And if you find the rosary intriguing, get in touch with a priest. Talk to them about what the rosary means and how it's recited and what you do. And then you can talk about other liturgy, other theology within the church. So the first answer to the question, can I do that, Rabbi? What is it you're asking me? And certainly there's no prohibition about German food, Polish food, Czechoslovakian food, Ukrainian food, even though that's what we think of as Jewish. It's our countries of origin. Okay? The next thing would be symbols. Why would you want to wear a Jewish symbol? Well, they're not that Jewish. What we call the Star of David, the Shield of David, we associate with Judaism, but when the state of Israel was looking for its emblem, it chose a 7-branched candelabra, That's Jewish. But the government realized that if you put that on a flag, no one will know what it means, because in the general population, what people believe is they identify the Star of David, the 6 points, the two triangles, but that's not Jewish. We can find it in other cultures at the time. King David picked it as an emblem, as a symbol, just like the fleur-de-lis or unicorns. He picked that as a symbol for his court, for his being King David. That's what he picked it for. And so it's become a symbol of being Jewish. Then you want to say to yourself, why would I want to wear a symbol that I'm Jewish when I am not? Remember, it's not an amulet. Like a mezuzah, the goal isn't to protect from bad things or evil happening. It's not. They're not amulets. They're symbols to remind us. Now the Chai, which represents 18, represents life. Two Hebrew letters that represent life. It's a mystic symbol. And again, you say, oh, someone's wearing a Chai. I wonder if they're Jewish. If someone's wearing a Magen David, a Star of David, you're going to assume they're Jewish. Now, what about a Chamsa, the palm? Again, out of Jewish mysticism, and that's an amulet to protect you. And it would be a conversation starter. And in terms of belief, well, there are as many ways to understand the one as there are leaves of grass on the fairway. So if you're going to say, I'm going to make an amalgam by taking all these, you might find that religion exists. There may be a group of people that have already done that, and you may want to seek them out and put things together. The next thing we have to ask is, could you teach us about Jewish... How about next Wednesday, an introduction to Jewish mysticism? And if I don't write something down... Oh, Passover's coming. You know, we want to come back more to Passover and observing the Passover, and we'll save mysticism for some weeks ahead. What do I think? And I've mentioned before, I believe in two states that recognize each other's right to exist, and neither Israel nor Palestine being a platform for attacking or destroying the other country. Two countries, England and France. They stopped many years ago with the wars against each other. And so we need homelands, places for people to be safe and secure. And it's up to the Arab nations to recognize the state of Israel's right to exist and then help establish a Palestine where both are mutually... Israel and Egypt have relations and trade. Israel and Jordan have relations and have trade. Works fine. Egypt isn't a platform for sending missiles into Israel. Jordan isn't a platform for destroying Israel. And so Palestine shouldn't be a platform for destroying Israel. Everyone has to recognize the other one's right to exist, and then we move on from that. That's my view, and I've mentioned that before. No place for terrorism on either side. No place on doing lawlessness, setting up territories we don't belong. Doesn't belong on either side. But I'm an American. I'm not in the Knesset, the Israel Parliament. So I can give you my opinion as a rabbi, but in many ways it's like being a Monday morning quarterback, not involved in the game. And so it's kind of neat. I think we want to keep our focus on, Rabbi, can I do that? I'm not Jewish. And so you want to ask yourself, well, I'd like to recite this prayer. Okay, many prayers in our liturgy, I can show you, are in daily missal, are teachings of Native Americans, Aboriginal tribes. I can show you a lot of the material. The Book of Psalms, which is the bulk of our worship service, is not exclusively Jewish. It's about a relationship with the one. And then that brings us to our next dichotomy, the next line, and that is, if you want to be Jewish, I'm reading what's on it. So if you want to say to me, please ask, and frame your question, take a look at it, and ask yourself, why do I want to do that? Will it enhance my relationship with the One? Does it help me get through the day? Does it work for me? One of the prayers that we have in Judaism is, God, don't let me do anything in my youth that would embarrass me in my old age. Now, that's not particularly Jewish. It's not particularly Roman Catholic, Presbyterian. I think that's a nice thought or idea to keep us on the path. And so if you go through our prayer book, our Siddur, and look at things, a lot is, God, thank you for waking me up this morning. God, thank you for my body working today. Or God, I pray that you will help me, that doctors will help me get my body functioning properly again. It's right out of our prayer book. And so we need to ask a question. Why? And what is it that I want to do? How long take to finally write down the Torah, Tanakh? Yeah. All the sacred documents in Judaism, the website is called Sefaria.org. Library. Books. Sefaria.org. And they will have all of our sacred documents. Many are translated into English, so you can read them. All the major ones. The more, I don't want to say obscure, maybe it's obscure is the right word, less popular commentators and discussions are still in Aramaic or Hebrew. And Sefaria is working on getting everything translated into English. However, it's a long, involved process, and they're constantly adding books and material in Sefaria. And the question, our sacred documents went through a series of evolution. And so it wasn't like we do today that Ingram Spark is my publisher and distribution center. And they arrange with Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and independent bookstores to sell my book. Okay? But Ingram Spark publishes it. And so it's an end product, and they wouldn't publish it until I certified it was done. Okay? Our sacred documents didn't have such publishers and printing houses and distribution that we have now. So it's a neat question, but Talmud, Midrash, centuries, over the centuries, to come out with what we have today. And Josh, you want me to invite you as a guest? Co-host with me next Wednesday night. Email, and we'll co-host. Okay? Simple enough. And if any of you, someone mentioned mysticism, please, in a week or two, email or text me about mysticism. Because even if I write it down on my pad of ideas of what I want to do coming up, things get shuffled and pushed aside. And so, Rabbi, can I do that? I'm not Jewish? Mostly, yes. When it gets into theology, ritual practice, we then have to ask the question, why? And will it help you unite with the One? And are you looking to convert to Judaism and consider this a step? Or do you think these will help you? And I'll be glad to work with anyone that would like to do that. Coming the end of our time, and I always end by plugging my book. And so, you're not going to miss a chance. Thank you all, and have a safe Passover, and have a safe Easter, and be careful out there. Lila Tov.